Yes. So the floor is yours.
Okay,
Good.
so hello everybody, good morning, and thank you for having me here in this round. I will talk today a little bit on how to build not only innovation ecosystems, but sustainable innovation ecosystems. I have to switch to the next slide. And sustainability.
Please share the screen. Yes. Sorry.
I have to reshare the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. But also please introduce yourself, Klaus. Of course,
Okay.
you are the
Yeah,
most
I already
famous
started.
person in Europe on innovation management, but probably not all of them knows about it. Okay.
Yeah. All fine, all fine. I will go back. Okay, so good morning. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I am Klaus Beetz, and I want to talk today about not only building innovation ecosystem, but sustainable innovation ecosystem. But first, a few words about my humble self. Long time ago, I studied mathematics and philosophy. Then I joined the industry. I was quite a while heading the Department for Software and System Engineering of the Siemens Corporate Technology. Maybe you know Siemens. It's a company located in Munich. And then I had a pleasure in the last step of my career to switch to the European Union and become the founder and CEO of EIT Manufacturing. EIT Manufacturing is one of the so-called knowledge and innovation communities of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, the EIT. Before, I was already involved also in setting up EIT Digital and also EIT Food. So I have quite some experiences how to set up innovation ecosystems all over Europe, and especially also to make this innovation ecosystem sustainable, which is our topic for today. And now, and if we look at sustainability, so sustainability has many aspects. We talk about ecological sustainability, about financial sustainability, about social sustainability. Just a moment, I have to go back again. Here we are. About social sustainability. Today, I want to focus on financial sustainability and talk about something that sounds complex, but is actually incredibly practical and relevant. How to build a financially sustainable innovation ecosystem. We hear a lot about innovation hubs, startup clusters, technology ecosystems, but the uncomfortable truth is that many of them don't last. They start strong, often with funding and with a lot of enthusiasm, but fade after a few years. So today I will walk you through not just innovation ecosystems, but how to design one that actually sustains itself financially over time. And what does now economic or financial sustainability mean? It's not just profitability. It's the ability of the ecosystem to continuously attract and generate funding, reinvest value back into itself, not take the money and buy a villa at the Côte d'Azur and enjoy the life, but invest it back into the system and operate on a long term without external support. In other words, it becomes self-reinforcing. Money comes in, creates value, and part of the value flows back into the system. That's the key shift from funded ecosystem to self-sustaining systems. To make it more concrete, we can break down sustainability into three pillars. First, the ecosystem have to establish diverse revenue streams. No ecosystem should depend on a single source of funding. Second, reinvestment loops. Success needs to feed back into the system, especially through exit and capital recycling. And third, aligned is incentives. Every participant, every participating organization must benefit from the ecosystem success. I will dive into these three pillars more in detail during my talk. And even one of these pillars is weak. Sustainability becomes really difficult. And the problem is why most ecosystems fail financially. It's not because the lack of talent, it's not because the lack of ideas, which are the base of an ecosystem, the talents and the ideas. Most of the time, it comes down to money, but not in the way you might think of. Many ecosystems are built on short-term funding, often from governments or grants. That funding helps them to launch, but it doesn't help them to survive. When the funding stops, the ecosystem collapses. So the real challenge is not starting an ecosystem, it's making sure that it can finance itself continuously. That's why financial sustainability is not a nice to have. It's the foundation. And there are four common patterns we have to take into consideration. First, overdependence on public funding. Many ecosystems rely heavily on government grants that works initially, but it creates dependency. Second, the lack of revenue models. Ecosystems often don't think about how they themselves generate income. Third, fragmentations. Stakeholders operate in silos. Startups, corporates, universities don't truly cooperate. And fourth, short-term thinking. Ecosystems are a long-term endeavor, but they often manage with short-term KPIs. So all this leads to one outcome. When initial funding disappears, the system cannot sustain itself. Now, let's look at a definition. What is Opala? Sorry. Sorry for that. Now we are here. Not here, here. What is an ecosystem? At its core, it's a network of interconnected players. Startups, investors, universities, corporates, government, policy. These are the key components. Think of a living systems where talents flow between companies, capital flows into startups, knowledge flows from universities into startups, into the innovation ecosystems. Opportunities flows through the network. So you have to think not as a static collaboration between the different stakeholders, rather as a living system. And for it work, 5 elements need to be present. Talents with ideas, capital, an infrastructure which has to be provided by the innovation ecosystem, the policy support, and the right culture, the right mindset, the right spirit. If one of these is missing, the system becomes fragile. And this is the core here, the innovation ecosystem flywheel. Capital, so at the first, you have talents with ideas. This is the base of all. You need really entrepreneurs with very good ideas. Then and you need capital. With the capital and the talents and the ideas, you can found startups. The startups create value. The startups will create, or successful ones of the startups, they will do an exit and they create capital. The exit create capital. They scale up and the exit create capital. And here is the key. The capital and the experience of the founders don't leave the systems. They stay in the systems and which then fills new startups. Founders become investors if they have done ex, uh, a successful exit. They will become investors. Talents build new companies. They maybe was involved in the setup of the first startup. They have now understood the process. So this is the sustainable flywheel. And once it starts spinning, it becomes very, very powerful. The capital ensures continuous funding. The knowledge layer ensures a steady pipeline of ideas, innovations, and talents. And the market layer ensures the solution actually scale globally. And these are the three layers. The capital layers, which ensures the funding, the knowledge layers, which ensures a steady pipeline of innovation and talents, and the market layer. And when these elements work together, the ecosystems becomes not just sustainable, it becomes unstoppable. It's a spinning wheel. And when you want to set up such an ecosystem, you have to get this spinning wheel running. And like all endeavor, it needs a vision. You know, like we want to go to the moon. This is a vision. And the vision for you should be to set up a self-sustaining innovation ecosystem. From the vision, you can derive a lot of questions you have to answer. To put this vision into practice, which infrastructure I need, which partners I need, which support I need, and so forth, which people I need. And so the vision here I try to formulate is really what does it the really truly successful innovation ecosystem actually looks like. It's not just a collection of startups and funding program. It's a self-reinforcing system where capital, talent, and ideas continuously circulate within the system. It becomes financially independent over time, meaning it doesn't rely on constant external funding, but instead generates its own momentum through value creation. At the same time, it's locally anchored. Like here in Munich, where you are in the around Munich, but globally connected, attracting talents and capital and partnerships from all over the world. This is important. Normally, a national ecosystem is too small, so you have to attract talents and also capital from outside. And most important, it aligns all stakeholders around a shared goal. And the shared goal is building impactful, success, scalable innovations. So this is the vision. And now, how to build such an ecosystem? The phase one is to focus, laying the ground, having value streams already in mind from the beginning. Normally you start with public funding, but you have already from the beginning the mindset, we will set up a financial sustainable innovation ecosystem. So from the beginning, you should consider having several income streams, value chains in mind you want to set up later. And then you have to specialize, you have to focus your ecosystem. For instance, for fintech, for biotech, on AI, whatever. Focus creates density, and density creates value. And then the second phase, the anchor institutions. The important players are university, large corporations, major funds. They provide credibility, a talent pipeline, and long-term sustainability. And especially the universities are for me very important. You know, when I was young, my father died early, so my uncles told me, hey Klaus, you are a clever guy. Go to the German railway, there you have a secure job with a nice pension scheme and other goodies, yeah. Looking for 50 years back, it was the absolutely wrong advice. Yeah, we have to promote becoming an entrepreneur, establishing your own business as a role model, as a very appealing role model. And this is for me a task of the universities. They should promote like they promote to become a Nobel Prize winner or any scientific award. They should promote in the same way becoming an entrepreneur and should stimulate the students, the young generation to go this path. It is worth to go it. To the German railway. Nothing against the German railway. Yeah, it's great. I drove here to Hanover with the German Bahn. It's really fine. But I think you got my idea. And besides the anchor institutions and setting up the partnership, you have to, you also need a capital strategy. Develop and run real projects, building the value chains like diverse revenue stream, like reinvestment loops. When a startup succeeds, they are successful and they generate an exit, they create wealth. And this wealth has to be reinvested into the ecosystem and not, as I already said, buying a villa at the Côte d'Azur and having a nice life. No, the entrepreneur should reinvest parts of the exit into the ecosystem. And that turns the ecosystem really into a self-sustaining engine. I was still here, sorry. Now we came to the next slide. The ecosystem governance. You see here all the stakeholders and are involved: universities, research, startups, entrepreneurs, mentors, investors, business angels. So you have to manage a very complex network of stakeholders. And all of them, they have different interests. So you need really a professional cluster management who is able to deal with all these different organizations and the different needs and the different expectations of all these stakeholders. And you need, on the other hand, a business manager with an entrepreneurial expertise to make this ecosystem sustainable. So you need clear responsibilities. It is possible to have it in one person, entrepreneur who, with a business understanding, and on the other side, a cluster manager who is able to manage and deal all with these different stakeholders. Such people exist, but they are very rare. So you can also have a model where you have a business guy and a cluster manager, two persons, but then you need a clear responsibility. Who has which decision power? Who takes which risk? Who finances what? So clear responsibilities. And the ecosystem has to act as a neutral orchestra between all these different stakeholders. And regardless which model you choose, to have it in one person, the cluster management and the business management, or you have two persons, you should go for a salary system which is based on success. That they have a base salaries, and if they are successfully bring for the cluster management, bring new partners, bring strategic important partners into the system, they should have a success fee. And the same for the business management. If they are able to establish really very good revenue streams or bringing good exits into the systems, they should have a success fee. And now looking a bit on the financing of the ecosystem. Normally you start with public funds as a starting point in order to mitigate risk and to attract private investment. So you need a capital strategy, early stage funding to start companies, growth capital to start them, and most important, no funding gaps, because there where ecosystems lose momentum if you have really not a clear strategy over the whole life cycle of startups from the early phase over the first steps when they have founded to the scale up phase and so forth. So you need a capital strategy to have it really cover the whole timeline for the lifetime of startups. So let's go a little bit deeper into the funding architecture. A strong ecosystem has a layered funding structure. At the early stage, public funding, as I mentioned, grants, angel investors. At the growth stage, you have venture capital, corporate venture capital, and so forth. And at the later stage, private equity and the public markets which will invest. The key is really the balance between these two stages. If you only have early stage funding, startups can't scale. If you only have late stage capital, nothing new gets created. So sustainability requires a complete capital pipeline. And then, as I already mentioned, very important are the stakeholder incentive. All the different stakeholders, they want to have a benefit out of the innovation ecosystem. They just do it for fun or for whatever reasons. They really want to have a benefit. So you have to develop a clear value proposition for them. The startups, they want to get funding that they can start. Then they want to get funding to growth, and they want to have good exit opportunities. So this is what you have to offer to the startups. The investors, they want to have a return of their invest, and they want to have very good investment opportunities. So the benefit for them you have to formulate are you can provide them with excellent investment opportunities, and you can also having and excellent opportunities maybe that may means that the probability that this will be a very good return for the investor is very high. Yeah. Then the government, the policy, they want to have jobs. They want to have a growing of the GDP in the region or in the country. So you have also here to attract public money with a clear value proposition for the governments of the region or of the country. And finally, the corporates. Also, the corporates want to have a clear value position, the access to innovation, but also the access to talents. Yeah. So if these incentives are not aligned, the ecosystem breaks. But when they are aligned, something wonderful happens. Everyone starts, every of the participants starts, every one of the stakeholders starts reinforcing the system naturally because they have an interest in the system. So this is really the stakeholder incentive, which is a very, very important building block of the ecosystem. And finally, the revenue models of the ecosystem, as I already mentioned, you should go for an equity participation. But with an equity participation, you have not under control when this money will flow back, because you cannot by yourself decide on the exit. The exit is decided by the founders and by the market. So it is really difficult for you to having to have the in your hands when cash will come back from equity participation. But nevertheless, you should go for equity participation. When there isn't successful exit, you should participate on this exit. Then you should go for membership or platform fees if you provide the infrastructure for the whole engine. You should go for strategic partnerships with corporates. They will invest in the system because if you have a clear value proposition for them, they have an interest that this ecosystem runs like an innovation flying wheel I have pointed out earlier. And you also can think of with universities, with research institute, with single entrepreneurs, they have an IP to participate in the IP commercialization. So these are just uh, uh, some ideas for diverse revenue streams for the ecosystem. If you go only for equity participation, you will fail because you have to cover your running costs. And with equity participation, it's great if you make an exit and you have a back of 50 million or more. Yeah, but this is a one-time event and you have it not under control when it will happen. On the other hand, you have to finance your daily costs, your monthly cost, yeah, your rents, you have to pay salaries for some people and so forth, yeah. So therefore, you need also a constant income stream, like from the membership fee, like with corporate partnerships and so forth. Okay, so far to set up the, the, the innovation ecosystem as a financially independent organization. And on the long-term run, you should go for a mix of financing. Round about 20, 15, 25%, whatever, you should look for public funding. You can participate in EU-funded programs, state, regional funding, and so forth. But the majority should come from the market, from the private economy, from companies, from exit, and roughly 30% around should come from services, from fees, from own business revenue streams you will set up with the assets of your organization. So this is roughly a guideline how a major ecosystem should be financed on the long term. And looking at the success factors and the risk. So the success factors is really you need a clear strategy. You need to focus. You should not do all. You should focus on one or two business area, on health or on AI or whatever. And you should be very, very cooperative with all the stakeholders, with open data spaces, but also with international networks. You should not look at this as a single organization. You should embed this into a worldwide network of other organizations that the flow of capital and the flow of the inflow of capital and the inflow of talents into your innovation ecosystem will enrich this. And you have to have a long-term perspective. You know, if you look at the EIT innovation communities, they are financed by the European Union for 14 years. Yeah, after that, they have to be then financially sustainable. This is really a long-term investment by the European Union to set up such innovation ecosystems like EIT manufacturing or EIT food or EIT health. So you have to have this long-term perspective in mind. This is not something you can do within 1 or 2 years to set up such a long-term ecosystem. And the risk is really that you stuck into the funding phase. And therefore, it is important that you have the right mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset from the beginning. Because it is easy, okay, in the beginning, we have a lot of enthusiasm, we have money from the government, let's start. But you have to have there already in mind that on a long term, you have to make this financially sustainable. Then the conflicting objectives. I already said we have seen this huge part of stakeholders. You will have the universities, the research institutes, the corporates, the investors, and so forth. They have all different interests. So you have to act as a neutral broker of these interests. And nevertheless, you have to for all of them, you have to have a clear value proposition that they keep the spinning wheel running. And of course, there is always the risk that you start revenue streams by your own and you fail. Yeah, this is like in every entrepreneurial undertaking, there is the risk that such own revenue streams also will be not successful. Okay, so far I am with my overview how to set up such an ecosystem. And now I would like to look with you for the final quarter an hour on some successful examples. And if we look at a Silicon Valley, what makes it sustainable? So the secret from the Silicon Valley is for sure the the huge amount of capital that is available there in California, yeah. But it's not only the capital, the amount of capital. What it makes it really as a very successful innovation ecosystem, it's the reinvestment culture. When the founders exit, they become investors. They start new companies. They mentoring new entrepreneurs. So capital doesn't leave the system. They really circulate around. And that's really the flywheel, the innovation flywheel in action, in, if we see it in Silicon Valley. And of course, they have with Berkeley, with Stanford, with a lot of other organizations, with the University of South of California. They have a lot very good universities that really lives this, what I said in the beginning. They promote becoming an entrepreneur as a very positive role model to their students. And this is what we have still a lack here in Europe, that our universities promote this in a similar way. Let's look to another ecosystem. Uh, Let's look to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is another very interesting case. It started with a strong government support, but over the time, the private sector took over. Today, it is driven very strong by venture capital, by a strong technical talents, and here the army, for instance, plays a very important role. And this, I would like for you to think also in your country, besides the university, also see at the army that could be a good instrument to bring a lot of talents into your systems. In Israel, you have to do your military service, and at the end, you have the opportunity for 2 years to work in a startup incubator, in an accelerator, and have develop your own idea and bringing your own idea as a startup to the market. Also, Germany or here in Munich, we have with the Defense Palladion accelerator, a very good startup accelerator that helps people from the army if they have done not only their service for 1.5 years, but if they have done 6 or 8 or 10 years within the army, they help them to step out of the army and still and build up their own company. And if we see at a current development in Germany, where a lot of military startups like ARX Robotics, like Quantum Systems and others, they came out of this path. And also in Tel Aviv, there is a strong technical specialization. So the key lessons, the government can start an ecosystem, but it shouldn't own forever. And Tel Aviv is a good example where the government kicks it off and now it's running on its own. Another example is Singapore. Singapore shows a different model. Here, the government plays still a strategic role in attracting global capital, building the infrastructure. For instance, Singapore has the most advanced infrastructure in quantum computing. They have a huge network based on quantum computing. I think no other region or country in the world has such an infrastructure for quantum computing. And They supporting key industries like the microelectronics or the quantum computing, but it does so in a way that enables the private sector to grow. It is very intentional, a well-orchestrated ecosystem, still with a huge government involvement, but in order to having really the right strategic focus. This is the key topic in Singapore. Having a look on Europe, and I already mentioned the EIT several times. So we have here in Europe uh, uh, two interesting or two combined models, the EIT and the EIC, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and the European Innovation Council. And to understand the European approach on innovation ecosystem, it is important to look at these two key institutions. The EID focuses on building ecosystems like EID Health, EID Raw Materials, EID Creativity and Culture, and so forth. There are currently 10 ecosystems already established, and 11th on water, marine, and maritime is on the way. To its kicks, it connects universities, corporates, startups across Europe. So it creates the structure, the network. The EIC, the European Innovation Council, on the other hand, focuses on financing breakthrough innovation. It provides grants and even equity investment, especially for deep tech startups that are too risky to traditional investors. So while the EIT builds the ecosystem, the EIC injects the capital into it. Together they form a complete financially designed system. What makes this model particularly powerful is how the EIT and EIC work together across the full innovation lifecycle. The EIT operates at the ecosystem level. It develops talents, supports startups' creation, and connects stakeholders. The EIC then steps in with targeted funding instruments, from early stage research all to the way up, scaling up financing, including equity investment. So the whole timeline from the early stage startup, even for the research funding, to the early stage scale-up financing, equity investment is covered. This combination addresses one of Europe's biggest challenges, funding high-risk, deep tech innovation. And importantly, it creates the condition for financial sustainability. Public funding is used strategically to attract private capital, de-risk innovation, and ultimately generate companies that scale and reinvest into the ecosystem. So it's not just funding, it's system design. If we look at Europe, more on the regions, and there are European innovation ecosystems, sorry, with different parts. Berlin, for instance, is one of Europe's fastest growing ecosystems. What's interesting is that it's currently transitioned from a grant-supported startup scene into a more major venture-driven system. So the key challenge now for Berlin is strengthening the reinvestment loop. So they are in a late phase of setting up a sustainable innovation ecosystem, on the last step really to having the reinvestment loop also installed. Stockholm is particularly impressive because of its efficiency. It produces a high number of successful companies relatively to its size. And more importantly, founders reinvest back into the ecosystem, creating a strong financial flywheel. So here we see already the innovation flywheel spinning. London shows the power of specialization. It strengthens its fintech, attract global capital, and create a dense network of expertise, which reinforces its financial sustainability. So here we have a strong focus on fintech, and this is really the strength of London. If we look at Paris, Paris demonstrates strong government intervention that accelerate ecosystem growth. But long-term sustainability will depend on how successfully private capital will take over. So here we are still at a state-supported phase. What's particularly interesting in Europe is that there is no single model. Different ecosystems are experimenting with different paths to financial sustainability, from the Stockholm reinvestment-driven model to the Paris state support approach. So the key question for Europe is to move from growth to self-sustaining systems. And finally, let me book to Germany and to Bavaria and Munich, where you are. Here we have in Germany really, I called it an ecosystem stack. We have the Germany, the country, we have the region of Bavaria, and then we have the city of Munich. And Germany is one of the most powerful industrial innovation ecosystems. However, its startup ecosystem is still maturing financially. While there is strong public funding and deep corporate R&D capability, the challenge remains building a strong venture capital flywheel, where successful exits are reinvested into the ecosystem at scale. Bavaria is one of Europe's strongest industrial innovation regions, with deep ties between corporates, universities, and applied research. The region excels in generating innovation, but like the rest of Germany as well, it still faces the challenge of scaling startups into global dominant companies. Munich is currently one of Europe's most promising deep tech ecosystems. It combines world-class universities like the Technical University and strong corporate anchors like BMW, Siemens, MAN, and others, and a rapidly growing venture capital base. However, like much of Germany, the key challenge is not innovation creation, it's scaling. The ecosystem is still developing its financial flywheel, particularly in generating large exits that can be reinvested into the next generation of startups. So I come now to the end. Let's summarize. Ecosystem, the most important things you should take away here. Ecosystems fail without a financial design and a financial model from the beginning and a financial strategy from the beginning. Sustainability requires system thinking, really. To bring this innovation flywheel into practice, you need this system thinking, and you need the long-term thinking that drives success. You have seen even Germany, which is now for some decades on the way establish innovation ecosystems. They are not on the level when it comes to reinvestment like the Silicon Valley. And incentive matters more than the funding size. If you have really a very good value proposition for the corporates, for the investors, for the startups, for the government, for the public, then they are interested in to get the spinning wheel running. And then they will support you in this ecosystem. And this is really, really critical that you have a good value proposition for all the stakeholders. And the reinvestment is the key to long-term success. And if you want to remember one thing, it's sustainable ecosystems are not funded, they are designed. You have to design this from the beginning. So, thank you for your attention. I hope this gives you a little bit of framework for thinking about innovation ecosystems, not just as network or as community, but as a financial system. And I'm happy if you have any questions. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I know that you are now going to Hannover Messe, and really, I really appreciate the possibility to listen to you. And yes, please, if you have any question. You have question? Yeah? Yes. Yeah,
Thank you very much for this inspiring description and very valuable opinions. I just wonder, you saying we need to design, not finance, not start pushing a button, but design sustainable economy ecosystem. Who is this we? Are you thinking about the government, or it's a bottom-up approach? So we need to create startups, VCs, etc., and then push everything up and then start thinking about the sustainability, or vice versa. Should we start, I mean, we means government, start designing all everything and then disseminate this information and start developing?
Yeah, I don't know the specific situation in your countries, but normally the country or some organizations came up with the idea, okay, we need a infrastructure, a framework for startups, for entrepreneurs, yeah. And then it's a discussion. Uh, 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 there should be an organization which is in the lead. This could be an existing startup accelerator. This could be a startup fund. This could be also a government organization, and they has to bring the first stakeholders. So the government, of course, because they have to finance the ramp up. Yeah, so they have to be from the beginning into the boat, but then also other organizations, and then you have to answer the first questions. What is our focus? Yeah, what infrastructure we will provide, what is necessary to get this innovation wheel running and keep it running on the long term. Yeah, and there you have to have a few organizations sitting together on the table, and this is what I mean with design. Yeah,
Oh,
to
okay.
design
Thank you
this
very
system.
much. Yeah, thank you very much. So now you are, it's clear you are talking about the ecosystem builders. It's not
Yeah,
specific government. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
this is the right word, ecosystem builders. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
so, please, you had question? Ask. You have unique opportunity to talk to Klaus Beats. Really, I know that it's not. I mean, I would be lucky if I could have such opportunity of more often. So please organize it for you. It's really unique. Yes, please.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm from Moldova, and we are faces a lot of challenges in our innovation ecosystem. We are a lot of actors in our ecosystem, but sometimes the communications is a little bit weak, I would say. Government is not so involved, so face a lot of challenges of the funding. How do you think, from our point of view, our main challenges is to bring together these public sectors, private sector, the university to collaborate and to help the innovation, to bring alive the idea for startups, how to help them to collaborate from your experience?
Yeah, as I said several times during my talk, you need to have a value proposition for all of them, which is very appealing. Yeah, you have to go to the government or to regional authorities, and you have to tell them, look, we can really create new jobs in your region or for the whole country. We will, on a mid or long term, deliver to increase our GDP, and you have to convince them with such value proposition the benefits you have to. And the same you have to do with universities, the same you have to do with corporates in your country, and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's unique opportunity.
Okay.
Greetings, dear Klaus. Thank you so much for the presentation. I also have a quick question. Because I'm not asking it yet. Yeah. I'm from Ukraine, represent GIZ Ukraine. And basically, what I'm just curious about, like your opinion. We also have some challenges, as like every country, every person has challenges, of course. But the question of Moldova made me also think that whenever you were mentioning ecosystems and ecosystem builders in your presentation, you always mentioned like various actors, and one of them is government. So in Ukraine, the challenge I see personally, like my subjective opinion, is that with the government, there is this some challenges in the dialogue when it comes to aligned strategy or vision. Like we have like different ministries, and every ministry would like to have like its own like digital transformation strategy, or their own views, instead of like uniting and having something like one common alignment on that for the country. And then it creates a bit of fragmented approach. And then such bodies that are the implementers body for ministries, they just have to implement how the ministry sees it. So do you see this as a challenge? Like, just I'm curious whether I am correct in seeing this in the challenge, and if so, maybe you can share some thinking, like how is it even possible to reshape or remodel in Ukraine, or maybe it shouldn't be like, maybe it is good, and maybe there shouldn't be any change. Just I'm curious about your thinking, thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we see this in all countries. The discussion with the government are always difficult. And if you look at the 4 European examples I showed you, these are all cities, these are regions, yeah, Berlin, Paris, Stockholm, these are all regions. So if you have in Kiev or other country a strong ecosystem with universities and with a local government, yeah, to set it up on a regional level. This might be easier. Also in Berlin, in Munich, in Stockholm, in London, in Paris, there is no national government involved. Yeah.
So how they decide like their path, like how they decide their direction to follow it, like the strategy, the vision, it should somehow be, united, or like
Yeah, of
with
course,
like.
you have to you have to find a common ground with the main stakeholders. Universities, the government, maybe some corporates and investors from the beginning. Yeah. So these are the main stakeholders, and they should be involved in the ecosystem from the beginning. Yeah.
And then just involve government from time to time. Or no? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it would be good if government would be involved from the beginning, because they have to finance the start. Yeah, so they are very, very important. Yeah, but like a car, you need a starter that the car is running, but then the car has to run by itself. Yeah, and so
Okay.
the government is important from the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now we have several minutes for one more question. Do you?
Just thank you.
Okay. Klaus, we are impressed as always by your speeches. And I always, thank you, because you are one of the best speaker. And yeah, I mean, personally,
Yeah,
and
no,
for all of us,
thanks,
thank you.
Olga. All the best to the team, and all the best. Enjoy the days at Feldafing. It's a very, very nice location. I know it quite well. Yeah. Enjoy the days there. All the best, and very much success in your countries.
Thank you. And looking forward for further opportunities to cooperate. Thank you,
Yeah.
Klaus.
Thank you, Olga.
Bye. Have a nice day in Hanover.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good.